Welcome, folks. I'm Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
What's up?
A couple videos have come out showing the differences between the initial release of Justice League and the Zack Snyder release. This one is from IGN. My brother reacted to one from, I believe it's called Movie Mojo, the YouTube channel. So yeah, I wanted to look at a different one just to separate myself.
I'm not the same!
Yeah, I'm not copying him on everything he does, but I imagine that a lot of what's going to be shown here will be largely the same. But let's check this out. This is from IGN's YouTube channel.
Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally here, and it is a markedly different film than what was released in theaters in 2017 after Warner Brothers brought in director Joss Whedon to finish the movie with various reshoots and edits. But now that Snyder's original vision has been restored, we've cataloged the biggest differences between the two Justice League films. So here's a breakdown of everything that changed from one cut to another, including the format, the story, the heroes, the villains, and how it all wraps up in the end. Let's get the big stuff out of the way first. One thing you could not miss, the theatrical version was rated PG-13, but the Snyder cut is rated R for violence and some language, and it definitely earns it with tons of blood and both Batman and Cyborg saying "F***" instead of going standard widescreen like the theatrical.
How did you feel about that, real quick?
I think initially I was just kind of like, but then I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Whatevs.
I didn't care for it personally, but that's me being an old fogey. For some reason, I just don't want my heroes.
You're like, death, violence, carnage, blood, beheadings. Yeah. That's fine. I'm cool with it. Don't make Batman swear, though.
You just gotta, watch out for the children's ears,
Release, the Snyder cut opted for a 1:33:1 ratio, which is why it's presented in that square, full-frame look that Snyder is so fond of. The Snyder cut score by Thomas Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, was replaced by Danny Elfman's for the theatrical release, but now it's back along with some new songs. Justice League was trimmed down to 2 hours for the theatrical version, but the Snyder cut clocks in at 4 hours and 2 minutes, divided into 6 chapters.
Real quick, about the music. I don't even recall what the soundtrack Danny Elfman did sounded like.
No, I don't, but I really liked the music in the Snyder cut, actually. I thought it really helped set the tone.
I liked the music as when people were singing.
Yeah, the soundtrack was really, really good. I want to go back and listen to that because it was really, it evoked emotion. It was very atmospheric. It was really different. Yeah. And it's like the type of stuff I enjoy listening to anyway.
Yeah, as far as the score, though, I didn't particularly love the score in Justice League Snyder's cut. It was fine. It was serviceable.
Filling much of the Snyder cut's hearty runtime is extended versions of many action scenes that had been trimmed down for the theatrical version. The restored action scenes include Wonder Woman stopping the terrorists and obliterating that dude in the hat. Steppenwolf and his parademons have a much bigger fight with the Amazons, and the Mother Box Temple crumbles into the ocean. Reborn Superman taking on the Justice League has some added bits, and the battle below Stryker's Island Penitentiary is beefed up as well. It's notable how the theatrical cut had brighter coloring and the final battle was shaded in red, whereas the new version has Snyder's signature desaturated colors and that red filter is nowhere to be seen. And one of the major things Zack Snyder wanted to do with his version of Justice League was to have the film reflect the darker, more serious tone of his previous movies. Warner Brothers, with the Joss Whedon reshoots, tried to make the film echo the MCU shtick by giving it a less grim vibe and more jokes.
Do you bleed? Oh, something's definitely bleeding.
I actually like that joke. I know that's like cheesy and cornball, but I love it. It's like, that's actually funny because it calls back to the previous film. It's like getting him back for what he did.
Right.
But I think in that mode, Superman was just ballistic and not even able to utter words because he's just all rage and attack mode. So maybe it makes less sense that he's saying anything at all until Lois shows up.
Yeah, and then also, I hadn't thought about this when watching it, but if he doesn't remember who he is, how would he remember to say that unless that's, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, calling back
to
the previous thing if he doesn't even remember who he is.
Maybe he's just got fragments. Like the things that pissed him off the most. I don't know.
Are all excised from the much more dramatic Snyder cut. Although it does still have a sense of humor, but it's more understated as the main tone of the film is the dread of the coming evil that is steadily overcome by the blossoming hope of the heroes.
He's gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it.
I like that shot. I thought that was cool. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
Now that we've covered the basic differences, let's dig into the story and how the heroes of the Justice League themselves differ between the two versions. The theatrical cut started with those cute little podcast kids filming Superman, Superman's funeral, and the world mourning his loss. Batman kicks off the movie already knowing there's an alien invasion and uses a burglar's fear to draw out a parademon. A burglar, mind you, that knows an awful lot about the plot. None of that is part of the Snyder Cut.
I hated that scene in the Whedon version with the burglar on the roof.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated it. You know, because I didn't hate everything about the initial release of Justice League, but that was definitely a scene that stuck out as like, this is garbage. This is really bad.
Honestly, like looking back on it, I can't even remember that scene anymore, which means it can't have been that good.
Which starts following Superman's scream, a death knell that reverberates across the DC universe and wakes up the mother boxes. This is of vital importance because, as it is explained later in the film, now we know it was the mother boxes that signaled to Steppenwolf and his master Darkseid that the planet was vulnerable without Superman there to protect it. After that, we shift to Bruce searching for Aquaman, but at this point, he's just on a mission to recruit allies, and it's not until later when Wonder Woman tells him about Darkseid that he learns there are, you know, actual aliens invading the world. The Bruce and Diana arc that formed the spine of the theatrical cut is gone. Instead, the Snyder Cut focuses on the bond forming between the entire team. As for individual character beats, in the Snyder Cut, Batman has a couple tech side quests between his energy-absorbing gauntlets and fixing his flying fox plane, the latter of which Cyborg helps him solve.
It wants to fly.
Batman's full character arc that started in Batman v Superman is now paid off as he went from that lowest of lows to finally being the more hopeful and optimistic one.
Thanks, Alfred.
It's true.
Plus, we get a ton more Alfred scenes and those.
The whole thing with Batman becoming more optimistic, I actually loved that transition of Bruce Wayne. I thought that was a fantastic addition in the Snyder Cut because everything was sort of just like grim throughout the Snyderverse, is as far as, you know, the DC films, and to have that like hopeful character from a character that is largely like logical and analytical. I thought that was actually a cool, you know, take on Bruce Wayne.
Those are all priceless.
That's probably enough.
I love this scene.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought that was fantastic.
For Superman, most of Henry Cavill's scenes were reshot by Whedon for the theatrical version to better fit that film's lighter tone. And most infamously, Cavill was not allowed to shave the mustache he was sporting while filming Mission Impossible Fallout, so it was digitally removed to questionable success.
Yeah.
The theatrical cut had Superman joining the final battle and flying off to save people with Flash. People like that Russian family, but that's all gone. Whereas in the Snyder cut, there's more time spent exploring the aftermath of his return. As Superman walks back through the Kryptonian ship and dons a comics-accurate black suit, there's a new scene where he meets Alfred and he stays put to help defeat Steppenwolf. As for Lois Lane, in the Whedon version of Justice League, Lois mourned the death of Clark and got called thirsty by Martha Kent. Whereas in the Snyder cut, she leaves her job at the Daily Planet and spends her time in grief visiting the Superman Memorial, and she has a much different heart-to-heart with Martha Kent. Although, it turns out that Martha in this scene was actually the Martian Manhunter, who was cut from the theatrical version. He's now added back in, revealing General Swanwick from Man of Steel is actually the shape-shifting hero from Mars. For The Flash, a big Barry Allen scene was cut for the theatrical version, but now it's back so we can see how he saved the woman fated to one day steal his heart, Iris West, and set up the Flash solo movie. The Flash is still the comedic relief and a newbie hero, like in the theatrical cut.
As a bat signal, that's your... Oh, sorry.
But in the Snyder cut, things like him tripping during the underground battle and Batman giving him a little pep talk are no longer there.
Save one person.
Which one?
Moving on to Aquaman, there are a few more Atlantis-centric scenes in Snyder's movie. Most notably, a previously cut scene of Arthur meeting a long-haired Vulko. Overall, Aquaman is much more wild in the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
Whereas he's a bit more brooding in the Snyder cut.
Yeah.
I actually liked the theatrical cut version of Aquaman. I mean, I liked what the Snyder cut, how much more it gave to Aquaman, but I like the energy of Aquaman in the Joss
Yeah,
Whedon
he was just
version.
like lighter and just another like comic relief.
Another form of levity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of wish that some of that was retained, but I get it. It's a different vision.
Also, Mara's accent seemingly has changed between the two cuts.
Yeah.
And she gets in on the R-rating fun by trying to bloodbend Steppenwolf. And then we come to Cyborg, whose entire story was rebuilt for the Snyder Cut, positioning him as the heart of the story as Snyder originally intended. Overall, it's not just Cyborg's origin story that was missing from the theatrical cut, but also his key role in the breaking of the Unity, the full scope of the abilities he's been blessed/cursed with by the Mother Box, and his relationship with his father, Silas Stone. Silas proves to be a key supporting character in the Snyder Cut. As we see more of his work at Star Labs, he lets the League pass during a new sequence where they infiltrate the facility, he sacrifices himself to mark the Mother Box with a heat signature, and he leaves a recorder for Cyborg that becomes the emotional bookend to their father-son story. Silas's lab mate, Ryan Choi, was cut from the theatrical version, but he's back in the Snyder Cut. Comics fans know him better as the Atom.
Right.
That's enough of the heroes. Let's dig into the bad guys of the Justice League, starting with the biggest bad DC has to offer, Darkseid. Whereas he wasn't even seen or mentioned in the theatrical cut, Darkseid looms large over Zack Snyder's Justice League. We learn about his history thanks to Wonder Woman, and that leads to a flashback of an epic battle. The theatrical version had replaced Darkseid with Steppenwolf for this battle, but now Darkseid is back as his younger self named Uxas in the comics. The flashback battle is longer, with some new moments of violence where he slices off a Green Lantern's ring hand and is defeated when he takes a big old bloody axe chop in the shoulder from Ares. In the Snyder Cut, Darkseid is shown chilling on Apocalypse with Desaad and Granny Goodness. We learn about his goal to obtain the anti-life equation, and he even plays a role in the final battle as he witnesses the League's might through a boom tube. We also see a nightmare sequence showing how Darkseid would devastate Earth if he were to turn Superman evil with the anti-life equation. As for Steppenwolf, in the theatrical release, his master plan is all his idea seemingly, and his fear ultimately gets him killed by his own parademons. In the Snyder Cut, he's there on a mission for Darkseid. Not to mention he gets a new look and a slightly altered voice. We get a better sense of his motivation. He reports into Desaad and later Darkseid himself, and then he gets sent back to Apocalypse in pieces.
The way he looks in the Snyder Cut is just so much better.
Well, I mean, it's better realized.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's slightly newer technology. Is Snyder actually having his hands on it to go, no, this got to look like this? But he just looks far superior in the Snyder Cut. I prefer it so much. Like, that's one of the things that bugged me in the original release was how he looked. I was just like, he doesn't look very lifelike to me. Versus the Snyder Cut, he just like.
Yeah, it's the eyes.
He looks
too.
very formidable. The voice is formidable. Everything.
The cool armor that kind of shifts and changes.
Exactly.
I thought that was really, really cool. He doesn't care about you.
Finally, let's dig into the major differences of how each Justice League film ended. In the final battle, there are some moments from the theatrical cut that remained in the Snyder Cut, such as Bruce leading the parademons away and Arthur surfing down a building, but the Snyder Cut has tons of new action beats and plot twists, like Batman breaking through the barrier, Cyborg hacking the Mother Boxes, and Flash racing around and eventually using time travel to save the day. Also, the Justice League finally gets their big slow motion moment where they assemble as a team. Then there's the credit scenes. The Superman versus Flash race to decide the fastest man alive was exclusive to the theatrical cut. Both films have a stinger with Deathstroke meeting Lex Luthor, but in the theatrical cut, Lex is recruiting him for a new villain team, while in the Snyder cut, he's giving him some key intel to help him take down Batman, which was a setup for the Batfleck solo movie that has since been canceled. The Snyder cut also shows the Martian Manhunter introducing himself to Bruce Wayne. It also offers another glimpse of the nightmare future, featuring none other than Jared Leto's Joker, who was not originally part of the story and was added in reshoots just for the Snyder cut, finally giving these versions of Batman and Joker a proper scene together. This scene is of course a follow-up to the Nightmare Dream sequence in Batman v Superman, and reportedly that apocalyptic reality was going to come to pass in the subsequent installments of Zack Snyder's Justice League trilogy that, according to the director, he has no plans to complete. So the scene is essentially a little peek at what could have been for for the DCEU. So those are the biggest changes we found between the two Justice League movies. What changes stood out to you the most? Let us know down in the comments. Be sure to check out our review of Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as a VFX breakdown of the flashback scene by the folks who made it at Weta Digital. And don't forget to follow and subscribe.
That scene where I forgot about it till they mentioned it just now. That moment where all of them are unified, I thought that was just awesome. I mean, it obviously somewhat reminds me of Avengers, I think it was Age of Ultron, when you saw all the heroes at the beginning of the movie together. But the thing is that's near the beginning of the film, whereas this is near the end, and you're missing Superman here, but still, it's so neat to see them all at once in this very comic book-like fashion, flying off towards the corner of the screen. I just thought this was great. And it was such a moment of like, I don't know, just joy. It's like, it's just great.
All the heroes assembled, you know,
well,
and they're
almost
here.
all of them.
Well, yeah.
Almost all of them. You needed Superman, but yes.
Yeah. It's a nice moment.
Yeah.
It's what we've been waiting for. It's like, yay, they're finally a team. They're doing it together and you know, they're going to save the day.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make the most amount of sense because Flash could have just outrun all of them, but I still like it for the imagery.
I didn't even think about that.
Then he gets sent back to Apocalypse in pieces.
I didn't know that was called a boom tube. I think that removing Darkseid, I understand why Whedon did it in order to get the film down to 2 hours. I get it.
It streamlines the story for sure.
Certainly, but it removes Steppenwolf's motivation to some degree. Like, he has the outward motivation, but he has the sub motivation, which is he just really wants to get back into the club.
Yeah.
And I mean, that gave it. I was able to root into his character a bit more and understand where he's coming from because he feels excluded from something. It's like he's not just trying to destroy the world. This is to get to this thing over here.
Well, yeah, because he failed at something, and then now it's like, okay, I just want to prove myself.
Redemption.
Like, I just want to, let me get back in.
His whole thing is redemption. It's not just destruction. He's trying to redeem himself. So you get where he's coming from and the desperation, the informing his character, why this is so important to him.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense. So when you remove Darkseid, you remove that. And that, I mean, at least I didn't notice it in the Whedon cut. I remember the racing sequence between Flash and Superman in the theatrical cut, even though the film wasn't great.
Yeah.
People seemed to enjoy that in the theatrical cut. Like, it made people happy to see them go toe-to-toe like that.
Well, it was a fun scene. I'm sure a lot of DC fans or superhero fans have often had that argument. People will often ask, well, who do you think would win in a fight?
Yeah.
Superman or Goku?
Yeah, and it obviously goes more in line with the tone that Whedon was creating, which is the more humorous, more levity tone.
Well, they were just trying to do, what if DC was Marvel light?
I know that a lot of people didn't like the red tone that Whedon put on the final act of Justice League, the 2017 version, but I see more of Aquaman in the 2017 version than I do of the Zack Snyder version, and that's the only reason I would give that my vote. I don't like the color more, but I just like that I can see more of what's going on. You can actually see what's happening with him, whereas in the Snyder cut, it's like I barely made out his action. The only reason I knew what he did there with the hair flip was because I remembered it from the Whedon version. I get that people didn't like Whedon's version of it in terms of the color scheme and all that stuff, but I at least appreciate that I can see what's happening.
Yeah, but I mean, it is very much like a Snyder signature.
Yeah.
Like that, like they were saying, the desaturated color. It's definitely a choice. It did kind of work well with the more somber tone.
I didn't hate everything Whedon did. I thought that there was actually some moments that I appreciated, as I mentioned. Like, there were some things I like. I kind of wonder what it would be like if Whedon wasn't limited to 2 hours, what that film would have looked like. What it would have felt like if it would have still been awful. The thing is, they gave him a limitation of 2 hours. Like, this movie has to be 2 hours long.
Right.
And so I'm saying, if they didn't have that and Whedon could just do what he wanted, what would the movie have looked like? I am curious.
Sure.
I didn't, as fans pointed out in our live stream, I didn't care for the Russians that were shown that Superman saves.
Right.
Like, I didn't care about them. It's like they mentioned in this video that there was that was taken out. Or just not put back in because that was all Whedon, right? And instead what we got was more of Superman, coming back and being restored. While I felt like it was a quick transition, just overall, going from crazy Superman to normal Superman, I like having more of those scenes of him finding who he is again. I would rather not have that Russian side thing, and I would have much rather had the Latino lady who Cyborg saves, the backstory with Cyborg and all that stuff. Like, so that was way more interesting to me.
So much more interesting. Like, I feel so bad for Ray Fisher and just the character of Cyborg now because, like, as I said, I'm a complete noob and I didn't really know anything about Cyborg, and so watching the 2017 version, I was like, I don't even know why I ought to like this character or why he's so cool. In the Snyder Cut, he was basically the main character. Like, his story was the most important, and it had a lot of heart, and you see his arc, and it's so interesting and moving. It just kind of lent so much more emotion to the film.
As far as the Jared Leto Joker scene goes, I probably said this already somewhere, but as a film, it didn't need it, but as a fan, I loved it. You know, Sintel sort of disagrees with me about Jared Leto as Joker. I liked it. I thought it was cool, good fan service there, and I enjoyed it. And I really, really like the Snyder Cut. While there are some things I miss from the Whedon version, I think that the Snyder Cut overall is... I would go back and watch those 4 hours again. And that's 4 hours of my time. And I'm very, very picky with what I would rewatch. And I would rewatch the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.